Imagine inheriting an island,
Not just any island.
the last feudal island in Europe,
That's the story we're diving into today.
the story of Robert Hathaway,
The American King of Sark.
this tiny island in the English Channel,
With no cars.
ancient customs.
And a way of life that seems frozen in time.
So how did an American businessman end up ruling this place?
Well, it all starts with Sybil Hathaway.
Robert's wife.
She inherited Sark from her family,
She was a remarkable woman,
determined to modernize the island.
while preserving its unique history.
But her journey to becoming the Dame of Sark was anything but straightforward.
Well, what was so difficult about it?
Her childhood on Sark, it was
Oh.
actually quite difficult.
In what way?
Well, her relationship with her father, William,
Uh-huh.
was incredibly strained.
Oh, wow.
He was, by all accounts,
Yeah.
a volatile and difficult man.
Oh, dear.
Sybil even described him as prone to outbursts of uncontrolled rage.
Oh, my goodness.
So you can imagine
Yeah.
growing up in that kind of environment.
Yeah, that must have been really challenging for her.
It really was.
And how'd that impact her life?
Well, things didn't get much easier for her.
Oh, no.
When she fell in love with her first husband, Dudley,
Okay.
her father vehemently opposed the match. So she had to make the difficult decision to flee Sark and elope to get married.
Wow, so even from a young age, she was showing that independent spirit,
Absolutely.
that determination to forge her own path.
And that resilience was tested again and again throughout her life.
Oh, I bet. In what way?
Well, when Dudley tragically died during the Spanish flu pandemic,
Oh, gosh.
she was left a widow
Oh.
with 6 children to support
Oh, my goodness.
and with little help from her father.
Oh, wow.
She had to scrape by taking on whatever work she could find
Yeah.
in Guernsey, Germany,
Mhm.
and even further afield to keep her family afloat.
It's just amazing to think of her navigating all of that
It is.
while holding on to this dream of returning to Sark.
It speaks volumes about her character, doesn't it?
It really does.
That even in the face of such hardship, her love for the island never wavered.
Yeah.
She always intended to return and make her mark.
And she did, right.
She certainly did.
When her father passed away in 1927.
That's when she inherited the island
Hmm.
and officially became the Dame of Sark.
And then how does she make her mark?
She wasted no time in setting about realizing her vision.
Oh, tell me about that.
She wanted to modernize Sark's infrastructure,
Right.
improve its tourism appeal,
Mm.
but all while respecting its unique traditions and way of life.
Oh, wow. That's a delicate balancing act.
It was a delicate balancing act,
Yeah.
but one she approached with incredible energy and determination.
It must have been quite a shift for the Islanders.
It certainly was.
Seeing this modern, independent woman
Yes.
stepping into this traditionally male role.
And then just a few years later,
Yeah.
enters Robert Hathaway,
The American.
the American who would sweep her off her feet
Oh.
and add another layer of intrigue to this already fascinating story.
Their meeting sounds like something straight out of a Hollywood movie.
It does, doesn't it?
A chance lunch.
A transatlantic courtship fueled by flowers and telegrams,
Yeah.
and a whirlwind wedding that captured the attention of the press on both sides of the Atlantic.
That is incredible.
It was a whirlwind romance, for sure.
Yeah.
And what's amusing is that Robert, this fun-loving American businessman,
Yeah.
had absolutely no idea what he was getting into when he married Sybil.
What do you mean?
Well, he didn't realize that by marrying Sybil, he would automatically become the seigneur of Sark,
Oh.
due to the island's ancient feudal laws.
So he went from enjoying life as a successful businessman
Exactly.
to being the ruler of a feudal island practically overnight.
You could say that.
I bet that was quite a culture shock.
You would think.
Trading in his golf clubs for a feudal crown, so to speak.
But from what we know, he took it all in stride.
Oh, good for him.
He embraced island life,
Okay.
learning the local Norman French dialect,
Oh, wow.
supporting Sybil's leadership, and finding his own ways to contribute to the community.
That's great.
He even helped manage the island's finances,
Okay.
which, given his business background, must have come quite naturally to him.
So they were a true partnership,
Absolutely.
each bringing their own unique strengths to the table.
And they weren't just content with staying on this tiny island.
Oh, really?
They continued to travel and socialize,
Wow.
blending their roles as the seigneur and dame of Sark with a surprisingly cosmopolitan lifestyle.
So they were living in two worlds.
Exactly.
The ancient traditions of Sark
Yes.
And the modern, fast-paced world beyond its shores.
Yeah. And they managed to navigate that duality with grace and humor.
That's wonderful.
But of course, the world was on the brink of a major conflict.
Oh, right.
And even this remote island paradise couldn't escape the encroaching shadows of war.
Oh, dear. So as we head into the late 1930s, a sense of unease must have settled over Sark.
Absolutely. And you can imagine the islanders watching the news, listening to the radio,
Oh,
feeling a sense of dread as the situation in Europe deteriorated.
yeah.
And remember, Sark is just a stone's throw from the French coast.
So when the Nazis invaded France in 1940, the war suddenly felt very real, very close to home.
Very close to home. And Sybil later recounted how they could actually see the smoke rising from burning oil tanks along the French coast as the German forces advanced.
Wow.
It must have been a chilling sight.
I bet.
A stark reminder that the war was no longer something happening far away.
So what was the reaction on Sark? Did they consider evacuating?
Well, the British government offered the islanders the option to leave.
Okay.
But remarkably, not a single resident chose to flee.
Wow.
Sybil, in her characteristically bold manner, decided to stay and face the occupation alongside her people.
What a powerful testament to the sense of community they had on that island.
Absolutely. And a decision that speaks volumes about Sybil's leadership.
I agree.
She wasn't going to abandon her people in their time of need.
No.
Instead, she prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead.
So the waiting game began.
The tension, the uncertainty hanging in the air, and then on July 4th, 1940, a small detachment of 10 German soldiers arrived on Sark.
10 soldiers?
To occupy the island.
It seems almost surreal.
Doesn't it? This tiny feudal island, steeped in tradition, yet suddenly caught in the grip of a global conflict, and Sybil, ever the strategist, was ready for them.
What do you mean?
She carefully orchestrated their arrival almost like a stage production.
Oh, wow.
She made the German officers walk a considerable distance from the harbor to her home.
Okay.
And she had her maid formally announce them as if they were any other guests.
So even in this moment of occupation, she wanted to remind them that they were still guests on her island.
In her home, exactly.
Wow.
It was a subtle but powerful assertion of her authority.
It really was.
She was acknowledging the reality of the situation,
Wow.
but simultaneously refusing to be completely cowed by it.
How did the Germans respond to this? Did they try to assert their dominance right away?
Well, they imposed new rules, of course.
Okay.
There was a curfew.
Uh-huh.
Firearms were confiscated.
Right.
Alcohol was banned and gatherings were strictly limited. But Sybil and Robert were the only leaders in the Channel Islands who refused to sign any German orders.
Oh.
It seems like a small act of defiance.
Yes.
But it speaks volumes about their spirit.
Yeah.
Their refusal to completely submit to the occupying forces.
So while they had to comply with the regulations, they also found ways to resist more subtly.
For instance, they continued to listen to the BBC on their secret radio.
Oh, wow.
Risking severe punishment if caught.
Oh, gosh.
It was a way of staying connected to the outside world, holding on to a glimmer of hope.
It must have been incredibly difficult living under that constant threat of discovery.
Absolutely.
Knowing that any small act of defiance could have dire consequences.
And that sense of fear was compounded by the harsh realities of wartime life.
Oh, in what way?
Food became scarce.
Yeah.
Rations were meager. And the islanders had to rely on their own resourcefulness to survive.
So even though they weren't on the front lines, they were still experiencing the war's impact in a very real way.
Very much so. And that impact intensified after a daring, but ultimately unsuccessful British commando raid on Sark in 1942.
Oh, tell me about that.
The British, hoping to gather intelligence and disrupt the German presence, sent a small team of commandos to infiltrate the island under the cover of darkness.
Did they succeed?
They managed to land and capture a few German soldiers.
Whoa.
But unfortunately, they were forced to withdraw before they could achieve their main objective.
So a brief moment of excitement, followed by crushing disappointment when the raid failed.
Exactly. And it had serious repercussions for the islanders.
Oh, no, how so?
The Germans, furious about the raid, retaliated by installing barbed wire along the coast.
Oh, wow.
Laying thousands of landmines.
Oh, my goodness.
And imposing even tighter restrictions.
So the island, once a place of freedom and tranquility, was transformed into a virtual fortress.
A good way to put it.
Yeah.
And it created a palpable sense of fear
Yeah.
and isolation for the islanders.
Absolutely.
Imagine having to navigate this beautiful landscape,
Yeah.
knowing that a single misstep could trigger a deadly explosion.
It must have felt like their world was shrinking,
Exactly.
both physically and psychologically.
And then in 1943 came a devastating blow.
Oh, what was that?
Robert was arrested and deported to a POW camp in Germany.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
After everything they had faced together,
Yeah.
to be separated like that.
I can't imagine.
It was a terrible blow.
Yeah.
Especially considering they knew about the horrors of the Nazi camps.
Right.
Thanks to their secret radio, the fear for Robert's safety must have been constant.
Did they have any way of communicating?
They were allowed to exchange letters,
Okay.
but Sybil went far beyond simply writing letters.
Really? In what way?
She used every opportunity to send him small comforts,
Oh.
little tokens of her love and support.
Like what?
She knew he loved onions, so she would send them for flavor. And she would sneak in whiskey and brandy,
Wow.
cleverly hidden in medicine bottles to help boost his spirits.
It's amazing how resourceful people can be.
It was a way of letting him know that she hadn't forgotten him,
Yeah.
that she was fighting for him just as he was fighting to survive.
It's a testament to their bond.
Their unwavering commitment to each other,
Yeah.
even in the face of such adversity.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that even in the darkest of times,
Yes.
those small acts of love and defiance
That's
can
great.
make all the difference.
But for Sybil, it wasn't just about supporting Robert.
Right.
She also had an entire island to lead.
Yes.
A community that relied on her strength and guidance.
So she was managing these personal anxieties, these fears for her husband's safety,
Right.
while simultaneously navigating the complexities of leading a community under occupation.
Exactly.
It's hard to even fathom the weight of responsibilities she must have carried.
And as the war dragged on, those responsibilities only intensified.
Oh, in what way?
The Germans, facing increasing pressure on the mainland,
Ah.
began tightening their grip on Sark,
Okay.
further restricting movement,
Right.
communication,
Right.
and access to basic necessities.
Did the islanders ever resist openly? Were there any attempts to challenge the German authority?
While there weren't any large-scale uprisings,
Okay.
there were numerous acts of quiet defiance.
Oh, like what?
People would secretly tune into the BBC,
Okay.
share forbidden news,
Uh-huh.
and find small ways to sabotage German efforts. It was a way of maintaining a sense of dignity,
I see.
showing that their spirits hadn't been completely broken.
And through it all, Sybil remained a steadfast leader.
A symbol of resilience in the face of adversity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when did things start to improve for the Channel Islanders? When did that light at the end of the tunnel finally appear?
Well, news of the Allied landings in Normandy on June 6, 1944,
E-Day.
D-Day,
Yeah.
reached Sark in hushed whispers.
Whoa.
Passed from person to person, carrying with it a wave of cautious optimism.
I bet.
D-Day signaled a turning point in the war.
Yes.
A glimmer of hope that liberation might finally be within reach.
But did things improve immediately?
Unfortunately, not quite. In the immediate aftermath of D-Day,
Yeah.
the situation actually worsened for the islanders.
Oh, no. How so?
Germans,
Yeah.
reeling from the Allied advance and facing dwindling supplies, retaliated by cutting rations even further.
Wow. So even with liberation on the horizon, they were facing even greater hardship.
Exactly. And as the war dragged on, the Germans themselves began to feel the pressure.
In what way?
With their supply lines cut off,
Yeah.
they were running low on food and other essential supplies.
So the occupiers and the occupied,
Yes,
both struggling to survive.
both caught in this increasingly desperate situation.
And then thankfully the end was in sight.
Finally, after 5 long years of occupation,
Yeah.
the moment they'd all been waiting for arrived.
Tell me about it.
May 7th, 1945,
Okay.
victory in Europe was declared,
Wow.
and with it, the liberation of the Channel Islands.
What a joyous day that must have been.
You can only imagine the sense of relief,
Yeah.
the outpouring of emotion as the news spread across the island.
I bet.
People gathered around Sybil's radio, listening to Winston Churchill's voice, booming through the speaker, announcing the end of the war, the end of their long ordeal.
After all they had endured,
Yes.
after years of hardship, uncertainty, and separation,
They were finally free.
and as the island began to transition back to a state of normalcy.
There was one more cause for celebration.
Oh, what was that?
Robert's return from the POW camp.
Oh my goodness, what was that like?
Sybil later wrote about how shocked she was
Uh-huh.
by Robert's appearance when he finally arrived at the harbor.
Oh no.
The hardships of the camp had taken their toll.
Yeah.
And he was, in her words, Nothing more than a bag of bones.
It's heartbreaking to imagine what those years must have been like for him.
But despite everything he had endured,
Yeah.
He was finally home,
yeah,
reunited with Sybil and the community that had embraced him as one of their own. Welcome back to our deep dive into the extraordinary life of Robert Hathaway. We've journeyed with him from the bustling streets of America,
to the shores of a tiny feudal island.
through a whirlwind romance, the trials of war, and the joy of liberation,
And now we explore the lasting impact he had on Sark.
and what his story teaches us about adaptability, resilience, and the enduring power of human connection.
It's fascinating to consider Robert's legacy because on the surface he might seem like a somewhat peripheral figure
That's true.
in this grand narrative.
But as we've uncovered, Robert's role was far more profound than it might initially appear. He wasn't just Sybil's husband.
He was her partner, her confidant, and her rock.
And that, I believe, is a key part of his legacy. He provided a sense of stability and unwavering support that Sybil had never experienced before.
Especially in contrast to her difficult relationship with her father.
It's a reminder that leadership isn't always about being the one in the spotlight.
Sometimes it's about being the quiet force behind the scenes, offering encouragement, perspective, and a steady hand.
And Robert's influence extended beyond his relationship with Sybil. He embraced island life wholeheartedly,
Learning the local Norman French dialect,
engaging with the community.
and even contributing his business acumen to the island's economy.
He wasn't just content to be the seigneur in name, only he actively sought ways to connect with the people in the place.
Exactly. And those efforts didn't go unnoticed.
I bet.
He became a beloved figure in his own right.
Oh, that's great.
Known for his sense of humor, his genuine warmth, and his deep affection for the island and its people.
That warmth really shines through in the stories we've heard about him. He was the guy who could make you laugh even in the midst of wartime rationing and uncertainty.
It speaks to his character, doesn't it? That even in the face of adversity, he maintained that sense of optimism, that ability to find joy in the everyday moments, and perhaps the most poignant testament to his connection with Sark
Yeah?
came 5 weeks before his death in 1954.
Oh, what happened?
They threw a massive party for the entire island to celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
It was a grand affair with barrels of wine, mountains of cake, and the entire community coming together to celebrate their beloved seigneur and dame.
It sounds like a scene straight out of a fairy tale.
A true celebration of love and community.
During the festivities, Robert.
This American businessman
Yeah.
who had stumbled into feudal lordship
Right.
raised his glass and delivered a heartfelt toast to the people of Sark, whom
What?
he referred to as my friends.
That's beautiful.
He spoke of the deep friendship they had shown him over the past 25 years,
Yeah.
a friendship he clearly cherished. It's a moving testament to the connection he'd forged with this tiny island, a connection that transcended language, culture, and even war.
So what can we take away from Robert Hathaway's remarkable story? I think it's a reminder that life is often unpredictable.
Full of twists and turns that we can't always anticipate.
Robert could have easily resisted this unexpected role, this sudden shift in his life. But instead, he chose to adapt, to learn to embrace the community, and to find his own way to contribute.
And in doing so, he left an enduring legacy on Sark, a legacy of warmth, humor, and resilience that continues to inspire us today.
Robert Hathaway's story is a testament to the power of human connection, the ability to find a sense of belonging in the most unexpected of places, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. This has been another fascinating deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon with more stories that challenge our perspectives and expand our understanding of the world. Make sure to subscribe and join us next time.